Skeletons are playing music on the wreckage of Europe. Behind the organ sits a decaying figure with the painter's own face. Felix Nussbaum finished this painting in April 1944 in a hiding place in Brussels. 13 years earlier, his world looked like this. Look at how much room his early paintings have. Bathers on the island of Norderney, sea air, a horizon, and a painted letter running along the bottom of the canvas. A net mender works in the open, unhurried, with the whole street around him. Even his lovers stand under a full moon, the sky scattered with stars. Felix Nussbaum was born in Osnabrück in 1904, the son of a Jewish ironmonger who had wanted to be a painter himself. He trained in Hamburg and Berlin, and his early work grew out of new objectivity, the sharp-eyed movement that dominated German painting between the wars. Death was already in the work, but in 1928, death was a subject he could visit and then leave. His portraits from these years look straight out at you. The people in them own their space. Then, in 1931, he painted the picture that made his name. The Folly Square. Young artists pour into Pariser Platz, carrying their paintings toward the Academy of Arts, while the old professors stand in a black huddle and watch. The Brandenburg Gate rises behind them, and above everything there is sky. Nussbaum was 27, and he put himself in the crowd. It is a painting about forcing a door open, made by a man who believed doors could be forced open. Within 2 years, Germany would begin teaching him otherwise. In October 1932, Nussbaum left Berlin for a scholarship at the Villa Massimo in Rome, the most prestigious prize a young German artist could hold. After he left, a fire destroyed most of the early work remaining in his Berlin studio. Then, in January 1933, the Nazis took power. Their cultural doctrine had no place for a Jewish artist, and Nussbaum knew it. He left Rome in early May, and the scholarship was revoked shortly afterwards. He never set foot in Germany again. Felka Płatek travelled with him. She had come from Warsaw to study painting in Berlin, and Nussbaum painted her the way one painter paints another, at the easel, mid-brushstroke, working. Together they drifted through Italy and France, then settled in Brussels and married there in 1937. For several years, Brussels gave them somewhere to live and work. The paintings were already becoming less secure. By 1935, the painter appears with a fixed white grin strapped over his face. He still holds the palette, but the man behind it has started to hide. The same year, he painted a harbour with no water and no horizon, just a thicket of masts, nets, and chains filling the frame from edge to edge. Harbours are where people leave from. This one had become a fence. His streets empty out. Flags hang from the buildings, and the only living thing left is a cat. His people sink lower in the frame, hemmed in by carts and stalls, with the open water sitting uselessly behind them. Then comes 1939, and the fear stops being atmospheric and starts having a face. 3 figures huddled in The Secret, painted in Brussels that November. One whispers behind a cupped hand, one listens with his eyes stretched wide, and a woman raises a finger to her lips. Behind them, a corridor of doorways narrows into the dark. The picture turns an ordinary conversation into something guarded and dangerous. And then the refugee. A man sits with his head in his hands at the end of a long bare table. On the table stands a globe, the entire world within arm's reach, and a shadow spreading across it. Through the archway behind him, there are dead trees and circling birds. Every country on that globe had a border, and by 1939, nearly all of them were shut to the people, like the man at the table. Nussbaum painted the whole world, and painted himself unable to enter it. The following spring, the war arrived at his door. In May 1940, Germany invaded Belgium. Belgian authorities arrested Nussbaum as an enemy alien because his papers said German. The man who had fled the Reich was locked up for belonging to it. He was transported south to the internment camp at Saint-Cyprien on the French coast. The globe returns in the camp paintings. Now it is damaged, and the prisoners crowd around it like men studying a locked door. He painted the camp as he lived it. A man hunched on a crate under a bare sky, wire strung across the horizon, and 2 prisoners at a latrine bucket behind him. The enclosure that had been entering his paintings was now built around him in wood and wire. In the camp self-portrait, he pushes his own face close to the surface, unshaven, hollowed, lit from one side. The huts and the wire sit behind him, but he takes up the frame himself and he looks straight out. That autumn, Nussbaum escaped and made his way back to Brussels, to Velka. There would be no more legal life. They moved between borrowed rooms on false papers, and friends provided him with a studio and painting materials. For 4 years, a man who could not move openly through the city painted what those years felt like from the inside. A figure climbs a pruned, branchless tree in a yard of walls and shuttered windows. He's climbed as high as there is to climb, and there is nothing to see from the top. In loneliness, a hooded figure stands in an alley, boarded up on both sides. The boards lean inwards. The path ahead stays open just enough to keep you walking and leads nowhere except further in. A thin figure stands on an empty cobbled street between high walls, a yellow star stitched to his coat. There is a lamppost, a drain, and a strip of sky. Nussbaum has stripped the world down to exactly what a hunted man is permitted to have. By now, the paintings have contracted to the size of 2 frightened faces. In fear, Nussbaum and his young niece press together in the dark beside a newspaper, carrying the words "Tragedy of Europe." A whole continent's catastrophe has been compressed into the gap between 2 heads. And in the middle of this, he painted toys. A child's doll, a tennis racket, a vase painted with a sunlit farm cart. The open world he began with, the beaches and streets, the skies, have shrunk to a picture on the side of a jug. 3 people study a map of the world in a cramped room, a yellow star lying on the table in front of them. The map offers routes and borders, but the painting gives them almost no physical space in which to act. By 1943, the walls in Nussbaum's paintings were doing the work the sky had done in his youth. They measured exactly how much life he had left to stand in. In his final year, the crowds came back into Nussbaum's paintings. In 1931, the crowd had carried paintings across an open square towards a door it intended to force. In The Damned, the crowd stands in a ruined street with nothing to carry and nowhere inside the picture left to go. Coffin bearers with skull faces move through the background. The living fill the front of the frame so completely that there is barely room for the dead to pass. He was recording the people around him while they were still there to record. Then he finished the painting you've already seen, The Triumph of Death. Skeletons play trumpets, drums, a violin, a barrel organ on a mountain of smashed culture. Sheet music, paintbrushes, a globe, all of it rubble under their feet. The kites overhead have faces, and the decaying organ player at the centre carries Nussbaum's own features, the alter ego he had painted before, still performing inside the wreckage. In the Folly Square, art had flooded into the open and challenged the people guarding the institution. Here, the objects of culture have been smashed into one heap while death provides the music. He dated it 1944. 2 months later, he and Felka were arrested in their hiding place. On the last day of July, they were put on the final transport to leave Belgium for Auschwitz. Felka did not come back. Records found decades later show that Felix survived longer in the camp than was once believed, and the exact date of his death is still uncertain, but he did not come back either. He had scattered paintings among friends in Brussels and asked one thing of them: if he perished, do not let his paintings die. His cousin, Augusta, traced them over the years that followed and brought more than 100 of them home to Osnabrück, the city his family had been driven out of. In 1998, that city opened a museum built for him alone, designed by Daniel Liebeskind. Its corridors narrow without warning. Some walls tilt inwards, some passages simply stop, sealed with no way through. This seems like a very fitting homage. Even reading this and looking at Nussbaum's artwork really moves me, and it's difficult to find the words. The faces staring out, the way he painted, just the sheer emotion. They're a documentary of the things that happened, which are unspeakably evil. And sadly, no matter what you believe politically, things like this are still going on in the world. Nussbaum painted while Europe was trying to erase him. Sidney Syme, disappearance was different. He rose from the coal mines to be called one of the greatest imaginative artists alive, then began removing himself from the world that had found him. Click to see his story on screen now.